Hello everyone, my name's Gold, and today I have a question. I've seen this question a lot. I have seen a lot of people give their opinions and thoughts on this question, and today the question is the new Pillar Chase 2 good? And to answer it in the short, kind of. It's not bad. It's definitely not a bad asymmetrical horror game. The main problem I have it is that I don't really feel like Pillar Chase anymore, and I don't really think it's a good version of Pillar Chase. So join me on today's journey as I explain why that is. The new Pillar Chase 2 is an interesting concept. They decided to do a recode of Pillar Chase 2. And within this recode, of course, they reworked movesets, monster designs, maps, and pretty much just overhauled the entire game. The problem is the new Pillar Chase 2's overhaul thingy is kind of worse than what we had like a month ago. Now, of course, it just released, so it's not going to have as many monsters as the original Pillar Chase. It's not going to have as many skins, as many maps and whatnot, which is completely understandable, and I don't really have an issue with games not having a lot of maps and monsters as long as those maps and monsters are actually balanced. And I find in Pillar Chase, I don't think the monsters are terribly balanced. Their new movesets are definitely good for some of them, like Vapor and Fogborn and whatnot, but I will say they are vastly different to their original counterparts. Now, a big problem I have with the new Pillar Chase is that it just kind of lacks that Pillar Chase feel. It's definitely hard to describe the feel of certain games. But when I played Pillar Chase, there was definitely a sense of Dead by Daylight. Like, it felt very, very similar to DBD, which I enjoyed a lot, mainly because it was pretty much, hey, what if we took Dead by Daylight but added in different monsters, but still kept that general feel and gameplay? And it felt fairly balanced and fairly enjoyable as Survivor and Killer. Survivors had plenty of abilities they could use, Killers had plenty of monsters they could choose from, the maps were pretty fun, the objectives were cool, and overall, it was a pretty fun game. When they announced the Recode, and I played the beta version, like the testing for the Recode multiple times. The testing version of the Recode was pretty freaking fun, I'm not gonna lie. You had MX, you had, I think you had Vapor, MX, Rosemary, Valhelm, I think you had AO1, I could be wrong. It was like 4 or 5 dudes, and overall, it was pretty fun. I enjoyed my time playing it. I thought the new MX kit was kind of rough around the edges, but wasn't terrible. And overall, I thought it was pretty enjoyable, and the classes were interesting. I'll get into them later in the video, but for now, I'm not a big fan of them. But anyways, the new Pillar Chase is weird, because the testing was fun, it was enjoyable, it felt like the old Pillar Chase, but just kind of revamped. What I expected the Recode to be, the old Pillar Chase, but kind of just with a fresh coat of paint, you know, a bit more up-to-date with more ASIMs. Maybe cleaner UI elements, a bit better balancing, new monsters and whatnot. And then, like, a couple weeks, maybe like a month before PC2's Recode released, they announced, like, the list of monsters, and oh boy, did it suck. Not only did they cut a huge portion of the roster from the first game, they also just said a lot of characters that were coming to the game just aren't coming anymore. I was very excited for PT2's Recode because they were gonna be like, we're gonna have Slenderman, we're gonna have Gorefield, we're gonna have Cal Percy, we're gonna have all these cool characters. And then they were like, none of these guys are coming anymore. And I was like, what? The only new characters that are coming to PC2 Recode, from I believe what we know, is Suit Nations, he's new. Hal Percy is also new. I think that's it. Yes, there are guys like Bertram, but he's like the reimagined version of MX, which, yet again, I'll get into later. But for now, all the brand new monsters that are coming to the game that were promised is like Suit Nations and Pal Percy. That's it. Stonehusk, scrapped. EXE, scrapped. Force King, I think scrapped. I could be wrong, but from what I've seen, he's kind of in a weird spot. Same thing with like Baldi, apparently. And a huge portion of monsters are just like either not coming to the game anymore, or they're gonna have like redesigns that are like pretty much knockoffs. And I'm not super against having redesigns for certain characters, but at the same time, it does kind of suck that like a lot of the skins that these characters have had are just gone. I saw I think a video, was it And pretty much explaining that people that like won contests for like skins, like the Sonic or whatever its skin it is for EXE. Could you imagine winning a contest, having your skin put in the game, and that killer just gets scrapped? Because there's a good portion of killers that are, if they get redesigned, those skins probably aren't going to be there anymore. And if they got scrapped, you just don't have that skin. Which honestly really sucks for those people. On top of the fact that it's like the community just doesn't get to have the skin anymore, they don't have to get the character anymore, they're just gone completely. And I personally was very annoyed when I heard the news guys like EXE were scrapped in MX, because like, why? I'm not sure why EXE was scrapped. I don't think they ever really said why. I think they just scrapped him and they just never told Raven. Like, told Raven when the public got the news. It wasn't even like a... It was just weird. MX was removed for the reason of I think the creator didn't want him in the game anymore, but was fine with having like a pseudo version. And overall, the new Pillar Chase, right, has barely anyone actually new coming to the game, right? It's like, guys, we're adding Bertram. He's just a pseudo version of MX. He is a new character, but he's not really like a new completely, like, he technically is original, but it's like the same originality of like Cold Steel the Hedgehog, you know? It's like, he's kind of original, but he's more so just an off-brand MX of anything. He's not super duper original or unique, and his moveset's probably going to be similar to MX. And then they have guys like PCX, which are coming to the Recode, but we don't know when he's coming, and I don't even like the new PCX. I hate his design. I think he's just really ugly. And overall, it's like, I was very hyped for PC2's Recode because I was under the impression that they were going to have a lot of the old characters with new movesets, and then all these characters that we've been waiting so long for that were promised like months beforehand were finally going to be added into the Recode, only to find out most of these guys are scrapped, and most of the guys on the current cast are scrapped or may not be added as a whole. So the new Recode is going to probably have less characters than the old version. And that's not even like on launch. No, it probably will just definitely have less. There's just like, I think 5 or 6 characters on the old version that are just gone from the game completely, along with like 2 to 3 guys that were going to come to the game were also scrapped. So the roster is going to be definitely a lot smaller, which kind of sucks because that was like at least I think, from what I understand, that was a big part of why people hyped for the Recode. There was going to be a lot of new characters that we had been waiting a while for. On top of the fact that it was going to revitalize older characters, only find out those older characters are just probably not going to come to the game at all. Which definitely sucks. I know there's hype behind, I think, a Darkest Deception crossover, I'm correct? Or like a Monsters and something like that. I think something involving Darkest Deception. And like, that's cool and all, but like, that's one new crossover, and it's like, we lost out on so much content, which is a big problem I have with the new Pillar Chase. There's just such a loss of content here, it feels almost like a downgrade versus upgrade. Now, the reason why I say it's not like a terrible sim is because I've played it. Now, I haven't clocked in a stupid amount of time in it, right? I've clocked in a decent amount of time. I've played Killer like a few times over. But the reason why I haven't clocked in a lot of time is mainly just because I don't find it that enjoyable. And for new things like the classes played pretty similar to their testing part. So the only thing new I would say is like the killers feel completely new, but a lot of the classes feel the same as their testing. Which let's get into the classes right now. I don't like the idea behind the classes because I liked the old Pillar Chases system a bit. I kind of enjoy the ability to mishmash my abilities to suit my playstyle. If I wanted to play a stealther type character who could like mess around with the killer and go invisible, I could choose invisibility and then like the doppelganger thing and just kind of trick the killer. It wouldn't always work, but it was pretty cool when it did, and it wasn't the worst thing ever. Or you could play a bit more offensive with like explode and invincibility and just run at them invincible and then blow up in their face. Now it's like we have Laser who can blind and stun the killer. And then Usurper, who's pretty much just... They pretty much turned the items into characters. Like, the Doomfist Gauntlet is now Usurper, the Medkit is now Boombox, the Flashbang is now Laser. They pretty much just turned items into characters and got rid of the abilities as a whole. And I like the ability system more because it allows you to mishmash abilities and pretty much just have a bit more customization that fits your playstyle and what you like. And you could combo them with items to get some interesting interactions. Now we don't have any of that. And while some people may argue, oh, because you could mix match like invisibility with a flashbang, and you could flashbang go invisible and the killer just has no idea where you are anymore. Or you could do like invincibility with the Doomfist Gauntlet. And maybe there's some busted combos you probably could perform, But I don't think a lot of people were really doing them, because if they were, I guarantee you people would have been talking about them a lot more. And I never heard people complain, oh, having the ability to mishmash abilities of items is overpowered and yada yada yada. To get back to my main point, I think the classes are just kind of inferior to the ability system because there's less customization, along with the fact that they're really, really expensive. All the abilities are, I think, 350 each. The classes are like 350, 650, 1,000. I'm like, why are they almost the price of killers, dude? That's kind of insane. Before you could get like 2 abilities and it would still be less than 1 killer. Now if you want to get a class, some of them are like the price of a killer, like Usurper or Time Stopper, or I think Time Traveler or whatever. I think they're as much as a killer, if not like a couple, like maybe 102 off. They also removed AO1. I don't know why they did this. Apparently it's because of redesign, which I think it's kind of crazy that they released the Recode and then are like, oh wait, we need to redesign AO1 and then remove him. Like, you guys didn't think to do this beforehand? Kind of crazy, I'm not gonna lie here. So now we just have one less character, which is crazy. And it's also not to be that guy who's like, oh, look at the Steam, like, not look at the, I'm never the guy who wants to be like, look at the Steam numbers, look at the, but like, if you do look at it, the player count on Roblox for Pillar Chase is like averaging 600. Like, I don't see that many people on it. I see maybe like on the weekends, maybe like 1,000, 1,500. On the weekdays, maybe like 600, and if it's like later, like nighttime-ish, then it's probably gonna be like less than 600, like 300, 500. I don't see a lot of people playing the game. And I think that's kind of crazy, mainly because the game just came out. On release day, I saw like, maybe like 5,000 people. I didn't see that many people on it. And yet again, I don't want to be the guy who's comparing numbers and be like, oh, it has less players, so simply it's a less game, because there's always those hidden gem games that have less players on them that are actually really goated. But I think it is kind of crazy that Pillar Chase has only like about 1,000 players active on it, the new one, and same thing with the old one. It's like it has such a small player base, and it just came out, which is kind of crazy. Like, Bite by Night's been out for a while. That game's averaging like 20,000. Forsaken averaging, I think, like over 100,000. Could be wrong. Uh, Even Doom by Fate on some days has more players. Like, I just the other day, so Pillar Chase had like 700 people on it, and Doom by Fate had like almost 2,000. Like, what? And I think it's just kind of crazy, because I think Pillar Chase is a good game, but I think a partial reason of why it doesn't have as many players is just because a lot of people don't like the new feel. And I could be wrong about that. We don't know the exact reason why it has less players, but I feel like there's a strong reason of why is because people don't like the new Pillar Chase. And I've seen a lot of people online agree with this opinion. And I think it's mainly just because it doesn't really feel like Pillar Chase anymore. All the monsters got redesigned from their old ones, so they look completely different. Which isn't the worst thing ever, but I think it'd be nice if we could at least have a skin that makes them look like their old selves. Their movesets are entirely different, so some people that like their older movesets can't do those same combos or abilities anymore and have to learn a brand new character, which, and again, I feel like this is kind of a stupid reason to stop playing game, but it is a reason I assure you that some people have. And on top of the fact that there's just far less characters, and there are some characters that people only played for. Like, I primarily played Pillar Chase 2, because I could play Springtrap, PCX, EXE, MX. I can't play any of those characters anymore. And I'm not going to be like, guys, I can't play my favorite character in this game, I'm not going to play it at all, which is a stupid reason, right? So I still played it, but I'm like, I don't really like any of the available characters for monsters. I think they're all just kind of lame. Vapor's not bad, but he doesn't feel that powerful in considering he's a starter. Rosemary's new kit is just kind of wacky. Frogborn's not terrible, because he's cool with his, like, lightning and being able to, like, force people to look at you, and that's kind of a cool gimmick, but he's kind of expensive to grind out for. And, like, I feel like a lot more of the work of the game went from being put into, like, monsters and maps just to skins. Like, the skins look great, don't get me wrong, the models are completely different, and they have really, really good skins, but then it's like, you have these great skins, and then you have, like, oh yeah, we gotta get rid of a character because he needs a redesign, and then like the whole new class system is kind of booty cheeks. Um, I'm gonna reveal the hitboxes feel kind of wonky from time to time. I'm not a big fan of like the new camera. I feel like before you could play in first person fine. Now for some tests you have to play in third person, which is kind of annoying because I don't recall the old Pillar Chase requiring you to do that. Like, I'm pretty sure you can do like first person for like almost every task. And overall, I'm like, I just don't really like it that much. I feel like the old Pillar Chase just had a bit more of a charm to it, and it just had a lot more things that I liked. And the new ones, like, available characters just aren't all that, in my opinion. The new classes just feel kind of there's less customization when it does come to classes. And the new tasks just are kind of horrible, in my opinion. because it makes it to where everybody as a collective have to work together towards this one goal, which isn't terrible. I did talk about the Recode in Pillar Chase, and I was talking about how it was kind of cool for teamwork-wise, and I think it could work, but my problem is they made it to where you have to all do your task to get the clock to, like, 0, then the escape opens, but you also have to do escape task. So I'm like, so wait, you want players to do all their you want players to survive till the clock hits 0, do the escape task, and then leave. You don't have to do the normal task, but you kind of want to, otherwise it's going to take forever when the clock hits 0. And it's like, I'm not saying, oh, clock hits 0, the round should end, but, like, maybe I am saying that. Actually, I am. I think when the timer hit 0, the round ends, survivors win was better versus now they have to get to the exit. Because now you lead to people like Valhelm or Valem, whatever you want to say, him just spawning in like all of his little clone thingies nearby the exit and just spawn camping people. And that was a thing I literally experienced in like a day or two ago I was playing, where it was me and like a few others alive, and the dude just spammed out all of his clones, and so we got like 2 people with it, because they couldn't do anything. It was like 4 clones. It's pretty much whoever goes first is probably gonna die, but the others will escape. And that's like a problem I had with like Alchemy Memories, where tripwires would just bomb the exits. Like, well, what do you do as certain characters? Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to die to this. There's nothing I can do. And so I feel like that just breeds the whole camping exits, which is never really a good thing in my opinion. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to camp exits, but like Dead by Daylight has 2 exits, so you just can't camp both of them, you know? Or Outcome Memories, which it does have an exit that is campable, but it's kind of big and vertical, so it's kind of easy to get to. And even Bite by Night has multiple different exits that can spawn in, so it's not just one exit you can camp. As far as I know in Pillar Chase, there is only one exit, and I'm pretty sure it's the same one every time. I don't think it rotates, and if it does, I think maybe there's like one will rotate. And I'm like, what? So the exits feel very campable, right? You have to do exit tasks, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm gonna be real. I think they're a cool concept. I don't think they fit in the game of Pillar Chase, because it just makes it much harder for survivors to actually survive. I don't really like the available killers they have, and I think the classes are kind of lame. I think they're more trying to make the game similar to other ASIMs like Forsaken, no, not Die Death, but like Forsaken, Doom by Fate, even OM to an extent, of having classes versus having customization. And I think a part of the uniqueness and charm of Pillar Chase was being able to customize your abilities, your loadouts, what loadouts you want to have, what abilities, what items you want. And there's so many fun, interesting combos you could do with all these different items and abilities that could lead to some funny, some annoying, some kind of OP playstyles, but generally it was fun, and it would make it interesting, because like, oh, this playstyle is really good, but it's kind of hard to go against, like, Godless if I'm using, like, a Brawler playstyle, or if I'm trying to, like, 1v1 the monster, because his puddles kind of just wreck me up, and such. And overall, it was, like, really fun doing these crazy mashups of having, like, certain playstyles that are against certain monsters or weaker against others, and it would make for a unique gameplay cycle where every round could be different. Of course, you know, you sometimes would just run the same, like, generic build every single time, but you could be adventurous if you wanted to, and you could customize. There were options that were available, and I think that's part of what made the game fun and interesting. Now, it's like you just have the classes. So it's like, there's not much customization between them. You just have that class. You can't play the Stunner Invisibility guy anymore because they're 2 separate characters. And whether this be for balance reasons or not, I'm just not a huge fan of it. In the testing, I thought it was kind of interesting, but I did miss the fact that you could buy certain items, and also you'd have abilities. Now they kind of combined certain items into just a character itself. There are still items you can get, and I believe the Phoenix shop is coming in a later update, but as of now, it just doesn't feel great. And even when it does come, we still won't have the, you can use this ability and this ability. You can't do that anymore. You're forced to either play Laser, who can tag and like stun the killer, or Usurper, who's going to Brawler style. You can't have the Brawler who turns invisible. You can't have the self-destruct dude anymore, because they're separate characters. And it takes away the customization. And I think one of the big issues is they didn't need to do that. You could have revamped certain abilities and changed them, but I don't think there was really a need to remove them in their entirety. I don't think we needed classes. I think Pillar Chase was good without classes. I don't think you needed them, because it just makes it feel more like the other generic ASIMs and takes away a bit of its identity and uniqueness. Another problem I have with Pillar Chase is, like I said, I feel like the monsters just are kind of bleh. I feel like a lot more effort went into their skins versus the characters themselves, or even the maps at some extent. I do like the breakable walls on the maps, but I gotta say, some maps just have way too many. like the pillar dungeon thing, I just feel like has an absurd amount of breakable walls, which is just kind of weird. It makes it to where, one, if you want to hit someone and don't, like, if you're chasing someone, you could miss and break a wall, and then they just get through the wall and escape, which is kind of annoying. On top of the fact that, like, I just don't think the breakable walls are that cool. Like, it makes it to where, one, it makes it to where, one, some maps are like, well, this becomes a really good loop if the killer breaks this wall, or if the killer doesn't. Well, then it's just kind of like we just have, like, these 4 hallways to roam in. Because, like, the killer, it kind of forces the killer to break walls, or more accurately, it makes survivors hope the killer breaks walls, because if he doesn't, the survivors have a much limited spot to go through. I want to be like, well, the killer's going to want to break walls to do shortcuts and whatnot, but they don't always really need to do that, especially if you're playing someone like Frogborn who's a bit more mobility and doesn't really need to break walls to catch up to people. So overall, I feel the breakable wall mechanic just doesn't really do much as a whole, and it feels kind of useless if anything, and just more visual clutter because they're always highlighted in red. And overall, I just feel like the new Pillar Chase is kind of lame. So to answer the question, is Pillar Chase Recode good? Like I said at the start, it's a good ASIM. If we were to take this as a vacuum, and this was Pillar Chase on its debut, I'd be like, this is a pretty good ASIM. It's not too bad. It's got some unique characters. Its killers are kind of okay. And I would say it's not terrible. But considering this was supposed to be the recode of one of the more or at least one of the cooler ASIMs in my opinion, it feels kind of inferior. It was supposed to be the recode of an ASIM that had tons of characters, tons of customization, tons of skins, and on release it had a couple characters you could play as and a couple skins. Which, yeah, I get it, it's release, it's not going to have a lot. And then they instantly remove a character because he needs a redesign. Even though it's like, if you knew he needed a redesign, why'd you do that beforehand? You know, it's kind of weird. On top of the fact that it's just lacking all the content the previous game had, which, like I said, oh, it's in beta. Of course, it's not going to have all the content that the previous game had that had been out for much longer. True, but I wish it had a little bit more. Like, the fact that it doesn't even have the shop is a little crazy to me. On top of the fact that I don't like the new task, I think they're just kind of lame. And it's like, I can't complete my task anymore. Everyone has to participate. And it's just like, there's like, you have to do this thing 30 times. It feels very boring. Before, it's like, clean up like 7 piles of garbage. And, I don't know, like, swipe some notes. Now it's like, you gotta get rid of all these bones and put them into fire and then douse these bodies, and you gotta do that 30 times for each. It's like, okay, dude, that's so boring and repetitive. Like, it's not interesting. And plus, they're not even mandatory. You can just skip them and do the escape task. So it's like, what's the point? Outside of just doing it for, like, I guess the money and malice, which I guess is kind of the incentive, but... And then the escape tasks as well are kind of boring as well, because you really just pick up an object, bring it to X spots, then do that like 7 times. The tasks feel very repetitive and monotonous, and I wouldn't mind if it was like a repetitive task, but you only do it like a couple times. It's a repetitive task that you do like 15 times in a row, and that if other people aren't doing it, you're the only person doing it. Even if other people are doing it, it's still boring. Like, the tasks just feel boring and long and monotonous, and I don't like them. I feel like the old task system was better because even if it was a task you didn't really enjoy that much, at least only you had to do it and it wasn't that much. But since everyone's doing the same task, they had to make you do it more, which just makes it feel kind of more boring. Especially if people aren't doing tasks or getting murked. Because then it's like, well guys, since 2 people died, now instead of being like, we have to all do the task like 7 times each, now it's like we all have to do the task like 10 times each, or like 13 times each. It's like, bro, what? And overall, it's just kind of boring. I don't like the new task. I think the classes were a mistake to add, and I think the killers are just kind of boring and not very interesting. I think the skins look good, and I think it's a visually appealing game, but it's a lot more visually appealing than it is actually fun to play and appealing to play. And if your game is like all graphics, no gameplay, there is an issue. I think there's fun to be had with Pillar Chase, and like I said, I think it's a pretty good, maybe even decent asymmetrical horror game, but it's definitely not a good Pillar Chase. I think it is vastly inferior to Pillar Chase 2, and I don't think it holds up very well to its predecessor. And maybe in a couple updates they'll make the game better, but as of now, it's not very good compared to its predecessor, and it's not very good compared to other ASIMs. I think a lot of the other ASIMs right now are just far more fun. I think even the old Pillar Chase, which was kind of rough compared to things like Light by Night or Forsaken, I would still play and enjoy because you couldn't play PCX, EXE on the same team in Light by Night, in Forsaken. I wasn't able to play Springtrap and do Double Trouble with, like, MX. You couldn't do that in Forsaken and Light by Night, and that's what made it fun. You could have these cool Double Trouble modes, you could have just these unique killers, And just because it's a wide roster of crazy different killers, you had guys from analog horror, from ARGs, you had guys from creepypastas, from video games, you had all these different characters, and that's what made it very unique, with a wide cast of characters, and made it feel almost like Dead by Daylight, versus the new version, which is just a bunch of OCs, which personally I don't really care about, because I think they're just kind of lame. Not to mention, one of them was just removed like a couple days after launch. So overall, I think the new Pillar Chase is kind of mid. You can definitely have fun, you know. If you disagree with me, you think Pillar Chase is the best game in the world, and I have no idea what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. Make sure to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and I'll see you on the next one. Gold out.